Okay. Oh my god. I had very little time. My name's Rex. This is test 7. I have like no time because the mower, leaf blower people invaded, and I have to go to work really soon. So I'm gonna try to get through this guy really quickly. I might not be able to explain as much as usual, but maybe we can. It can be a true speed run. All right, here we go. He's a weaver and a notorious miser, but then the gold he hoarded was stolen shortly after he adopted a child. Great. Okay. Unlike the gold, which did nothing and must be worshipped in close-locked solitude, which is hidden away from the daylight, was deaf to the sound of birds and started to know human tones, Epi was a creature of endless cravings and ever-growing desires, seeking and living sunshine and living sounds and living movements, making trial of everything with trusted new joy and stirring the human kindness in all eyes that looked on her. The gold has kept his thoughts in an ever-repeated cycle, leading to nothing but beyond itself, but Epi was an object compacted of changes and hopes that forced his thoughts onwards and carried them far away from their old eager pacing towards the same blank limit, carried them away to the new things that would come with the coming years when Epi would have learned to understand how her father Silas cared for her and made him look for images of that time in the ties and charities that bound together the families of his neighbors. The gold had asked that he should sit weaving longer and longer, deafened and blinded more and more to all things except the monotony of his loom and the repetition of his web, but Epi called him away from his weaving and made him think all its pauses a holiday, reawakening his senses in her fresh life, even to the old winter flies that came crawling forth in the early spring sunshine and warming him into joy because she had joy. Okay, so gold sucks. Epi great. And when the sunshine grew strong and lasting, so the buttercups were thick in the meadow, Silas might be seen in the sunny midday or in the late afternoon when the shadows were lengthening under the hedgerows, strolling out with uncovered head to carry Epi beyond the stone pits to where the flowers grew till he reached some favorite bank where he could sit down, while Epi taught him to pluck the flowers, and make remarks to the winged things that murmured happily above the bright petals, calling Dad's attention continually by bringing him the flowers. Imagine how much faster this could be if I could just read properly. Then she would turn her ear to some sudden bird note, and Silas learned to please her by making signs of hushed stillness that they might listen for the note to come again, so that when it came, she set up her small back and laughed with gurgling triumph. Sitting on the banks in this way, Silas began to look for the once familiar herbs again, herbs, whatever, and as the leaves with their unchanged outline and markings lay on his palm, there was a sense of crowding remembrances from which he turned away timidly, taking refuge in Epi's little world that lay lightly on his enfeebled spirit. Great. They're frolicking out in the field, I guess. As the child's mind was growing into knowledge, his mind was growing into memory. As her life unfolded, his soul, long stupefied in a cold, narrow prison, was unfolding too, and trembling gradually into full consciousness. Okay, he's waking up. It was an influence which must gather force with every new year. The tones that stirred Silas's heart grew articulate and called for more distinct answers. Shapes and sounds grew clearer for Epi's eyes and ears, and there was more that Dad was imperatively required to notice and account for. Also, by the time Epi was 3 years old, she developed a fine capacity for mischief and for devising ingenious ways of being troublesome, which found much exercise not only for Silas's patience, but for his watchfulness and penetration. Sorely was poor Silas puzzled on each occasion by the incompatible demands of love. Okay, so great. Happy passage overall. Which choice best describes the major theme of the passage? So A out and C is out because they're like negative, so it's going to be B or D, but I think D, right? Because they weren't talking about multiple children. That's what B is talking. It's D. As compared with Silas's great explanation. As compared with Silas's gold, Epi is portrayed as having more vitality. Isn't it just A, like vitality? She's very full of life. That was like the whole first paragraph. Which statement best describes the technique the narrator uses to represent Silas's character before he adopted Epi? Okay, the narrator emphasizes Silas's former obsession with wealth, expecting his gold as requiring certain behaviors. I don't know. The narrator underscores Silas's former greed by requiring his gold as seeming to reproduce on its own. I don't think so. The narrator hints at Silas's former antisocial attitude by contrasting his present behavior towards his neighbors with his past behavior. They didn't really talk about him with his neighbors. I think they only mentioned him one time at the bottom of like the first column. It was like, okay, line 20, I think I see it, but that was like it, right? The narrator demonstrates Silas's former lack of self-awareness by implying that he's unable to recall, he's not amnesic or an amnesiac, so I think that this one's going to be A. The narrator uses the phrase making trial of everything to present Epi as making trial of everything, so curious maybe? According to the narrator, one consequence of Silas adopting Epi is that he has renounced all, that's way too extreme, he probably still wants money to buy food for her and stuff, better understands his place in nature, seems more accepting of help from there are no others, looks forward to a different kind of future, B or D, I think. We can backdoor, or see which ones would pair. So 9 and 11. The gold is about the gold, so no. We're looking for something that answers 5's question. 11 is about Epi was an object compacted change in hopes that forces thoughts on or carry them away there. to the new things that would come with the coming years. Maybe that, I think that's 5D with 6B onwards. What function does the second paragraph serve in the passage as a whole? 30 to 52 was when they're frolicking out in the fields. So it presents the particular moment at which Silas realizes that it's not like the particular moment, I think. It highlights Silas's love for Epi by depicting the sacrifices frolicking is not sacrificing, I think. It illustrates the effect that Epi has on Silas by describing the interaction between them. Maybe reveals a significant alteration in the relationship. It's not an alteration, right? Like where they were always like good together. See? In describing the relationship between Epi and Silas, the narrator draws a connection between Epi's physical vulnerability and Silas's emotional fragility. Get out of here. Expanding awareness in Silas's increasing engagement with life, boundless energy in Silas's insatiable desire for well, he didn't have the insatiable desire by the end of the story. He like gave it up, didn't he? Physical growth and Silas's painful perception of his own mortality. Okay, he wasn't contemplating like his lifespan or something. So I think this is going to be most likely 8B, but let me see if the lines can help us. I'm going to start from the bottom because this is near the end, so the line rule says the lines are probably going to be before line 65. So 53. As the child's mind was growing into knowledge, his mind was growing into memory. As her life unfolded, his soul, long stupefied in cold, narrow prison, was unfolding too and trembling gradually into full consciousness. I think it's that. I'm pretty sure that it would be 8B with 9D. Nice. Line rule helping. Because using the line 65, fine most nearly means. Epi was 3 years old. She developed a fine capacity, like she's good at being mischievous. Acceptable. A keen capacity. Yeah, I think it's D. So it sounds good. Next, MIT scholars Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee have argued that impressive advances in computer technology, from improved industrial robotics to automated translation services, are largely behind the sluggish employment growth of the last 10 to 15 years. Well, bad. Even more ominous to workers, they foresee dismal prospects for many types of jobs, as these powerful new techniques are increasingly adopted not only in manufacturing, clerical, and retail work, but in professions such as law, financial service, education, and medicine. Okay, bad. That robots, automation, and software can replace people might seem obvious to anyone who's worked in automotive manufacturing or as a travel agent, but Brynjolfsson and McAfee's claims is more troubling and controversial. They believe that rapid technological changes in destroying jobs faster than it's creating them, contributing to the stagnation of median income and the growth of inequality in the United States. They suspect something similar is happening in other technologically advanced countries. Bad. As evidence, Brynjolfsson and McAfee point to charts that only an economist could love. In economics, productivity, the amount of economic value created for a given unit of input, such as hour of labor, is a crucial indicator of growth and wealth creation. It's a measure of progress. On the chart, Brynjolfsson likes to show separate lines represent productivity and total employment in the United States. For years after World War II, the two lines closely tracked each other, with increases in jobs corresponding to increases in productivity. The pattern is clear. As businesses generated more value from their workers, the country as a whole became richer, which fueled more economic activity and created more jobs. Okay, I have a feeling I know what you're going to say. It's like, oh, they're not. Then, beginning in 2000, the lines divert. Okay, nice. Productivity continues to rise robustly, but employment suddenly wilts. By 2011, a significant gap appears between the two lines, showing economic growth with no parallel increase in job creation. Brynjolfsson and McAfee call it the Great Decoupling. Okay, that's a nice name. And Brynjolfsson says he's confident that technology is behind both healthy growth and productivity, and the weak growth in jobs. Reading is the hardest part of reading. Okay. It's a startling assertion because it threatens the faith that many economists place in technological process. Brynjolfsson and McAfee still believe that technology boosts productivity and makes societies wealthier, but they think that it can also have a dark side. Technological progress is eliminating the need for many types of jobs and leaving the typical worker worse off than before. Sad. Brynjolfsson can point to a second chart indicating that the median income is failing to rise even as the gross domestic product soars. It's the great paradox of our era. He says productivity is at record levels. Innovation has never been faster, and yet at the same time, we have a falling median income and fewer jobs. People are falling behind because technology is advancing so fast, and our skills and organizations aren't keeping up. Okay, bad. While technological changes can be painful for workers whose skill no longer match the needs of employers, Lawrence Katz, a Harvard economist, nice, go Crimson, says that no historical pattern shows these shifts lead to a net decrease in jobs over an extended period. Katz has done extensive research on how technological advances have affected jobs over the last few centuries, describing, for example, how highly skilled artisans in the mid-19th century were displaced by lower skilled workers in factories. While it can take decades for workers to acquire the expertise needed for new types of employment, he says we've never run out of jobs. There's no long-term trend of eliminating work for people. Over the long term, employment rates are fairly stable. People have always been able to create new jobs. People come up with new things to do. Okay, he's saying chill out. Still, Katz doesn't dismiss the notion that there's something different about today's digital technology, something that could affect an even broader range of work. The question, he says, is whether economic history will serve as a useful guide. Will the job disruptions caused by technology be temporary as the workforce adapts, or will we see a science fiction scenario in which automated processes and robots with superhuman skills take over a broad swath of human tasks? Okay. Though Katz expects the historical pattern to hold, it's genuinely a question. He says if technology disrupts enough, who knows what will happen? So he's like, question mark. The main purpose of the passage is to talk about how automation is destroying the world. Examine the role of technology in workers' lives during the last, I don't think it's the role in their lives. Advocate for better technology not really. Argue the changes in how technology is deployed for changes. Assess the impact of advancements it's that, because that's the one that talking about basically means automation, right? So D. According to Brynjolfsson and McAfee, advancements in technology since approximately the year 2000 have resulted in bad things. Low job growth, global workplace changes, more skilled laborers, and it's not D, it's too strong, more skilled. I don't think C, that would be kind of good. So I'm going to say it's A or B, and then we'll pair. 13, let's try A, 1 to 6. McAfee argued that impressive are largely, speaking unintelligibly, are largely behind the sluggish employment growth of the last 10 to 15 years. I think that's nice because it matches with like the year 2000. This thing was written in 2015. I said it said at the start. Yeah, so the 10, 15 years, put it at 2000. So I think that it's 12A, 13A. 14, primary purpose of lines 26 to 28. The amount, in economics, productivity, the amount of economic value created for a given amount of such an hour. It's like a definition. Describe it's not a process. It's not a dilemma. Highlight, clarify. It's not a claim, like that's like someone's argument or the hypothesis. It's D. As used in line 35, clear most nearly means the pattern is clear as business generated more value. It's like obvious or something. So pure pattern is keen again. That's weird. Unmistakable. D, I think. Which of the following best characterizes Katz's attitude towards today's digital technology? Katz is the Harvard dude, right? I think he's like, just chill out. He's no, it's too negative. He's unconcerned about just way too negative. He's uncertain how they might affect. I think it's that. He's optimistic that they will spur job creation to a degree. Not C. He's optimistic. No, he literally said in the last line, right? That he doesn't know what's going to happen. 16C, 17. Oh, maybe the last is it line 91 to 92? The last line. If technology disrupts enough, who knows what? I want to say it's that. I'm going to check a little bit more, even though we have no time. People come up. It's definitely not that. 73 to 75. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Well, it takes to. We've never run out of a job. 70. We need to match that with he's uncertain. Okay, so I can't pick 17B because he says like we've never run out of jobs. He actually says that with a degree of certitude. Certitude? Is that the word? Who knows? Katz has done extensive research on. Okay, and 17's D. I think 18, as used in line 83, range most nearly means 83, 1, 2, 3. Something that could affect even a broader range of work, like range. I don't know, like range that. Okay, that's my target. Region of work, a range of work, scope of work, distance, scope of work. I think position. Yeah, it's B. According to Figure 1, which of the following years show the widest gap between percentages of productivity and you mean the great decoupling? Wasn't that recently? Yeah. So then in the graph here, it's showing that they turns into a lobster claw at 2013, I think. Which statement is supported by Figure 2? What's Figure 2? Output is per employed person in manufacturing factories have become more automated. United States, Germany, Japan. United States, Germany, Japan. Okay. The country with the greatest, this is extreme already, in output per manufacturing worker in 1960 and to 1990 was Germany. They're not the highest. Okay. Japan experienced its smallest increase in output per manufacturing worker from 2000 to 2011. Japan is like the middle color gray one. That seems like the biggest change. Okay. Each of the three countries experienced an increase in its output per manufacturing worker from 1960 to each of the three countries experienced an increase. Maybe. Of the three countries, the United States had the greatest output per manufacturing for each of the years shown. I don't think so. That's a little extreme. I think it's C. Which additional information, if presented in Figure 2, would be most useful in evaluating the statement in lines 57 to 60? Productivity is at record levels. Innovation has never been faster, and yet at the same time we have falling median income and we have fewer jobs. Okay, so the graph is showing me the productivity part, I think. So I need to find the falling jobs, the median income. The median income of employees as it compares across all three countries in a single year. I think single year wouldn't let me know that it's falling. It would just tell me what it is. The number of people employed in factories from 1960... Oh, maybe that, because that would show me a downward trend in jobs. Types of organizations at which output of employed persons was measured. That wouldn't show me that they're losing their jobs, I think. The kinds of manufacturing tasks most frequently taken over by machines. There might be certain jobs that are taken over a lot, but I don't know if that leads to drop in employment necessarily. So I'm going to go ahead and say I think that it's B, because that one seemed to be like the most solid. Anyone watching the autumn sky knows that migrating birds fly in a V formation, but scientists have long debated why. A new study of ibises finds that these big-winged birds carefully position their wingtips and sync their flapping, presumably to catch the preceding bird's updraft and save energy during flight. There are two reasons birds might fly in a V formation. It may make flight easier, or they're simply following the leader. Okay, whatever. Squadrons of planes can save... No time for digressions. Squadrons of planes can save fuel by flying in a V formation, and many scientists suspect that migrating birds do the same. Models that treat flapping bird wings like fixed-winged airplanes estimate that they save energy by drafting off each other, but currents created by airplanes are far more stable than the oscillating eddies coming off of a bird. Air gets pretty unpredictable behind a flapping wing, says James Usherwood, a locomotor biomechanist at the Royal Veterinary College in the University of London in Hatfield, where the research took place. That's a long name. The study published in Nature took advantage of an existing project to reintroduce endangered northern bald ibises, to Europe. Scientists used a microlight plane to show hand-raised birds in their ancestral migration route from Austria to Italy. A flock of 14 juveniles carried data loggers specifically built by Usherwood in his lab. The device's GPS determined each bird's flight position to within 30 centimeters, and an accelerometer showed the timing of the wing flaps. Okay. Just as aerodynamic estimates would predict, the birds positioned themselves to fly just behind and to the side of the bird in front, timing their wing beats to catch the uplifting eddies. When a bird flew directly behind another, the timing of the flapping reversed so that it could minimize the effect of the downdraft coming off of the back of the bird's wing. We didn't think this was possible, Usherwood said, considering that the feat requires careful flight and incredible awareness of one's neighbors. Perhaps these big V-formation birds can be thought of quite like an airplane with wings that go up and down. I don't know any airplanes with wings that go up and down, but this is just me. The findings likely apply to other longer winged birds, such as pelicans, storks, and geese, Usherwood says. Smaller birds create more complex wakes that could make drafting too difficult. The researchers did not attempt to calculate the bird's energy savings because the necessary physiological measurements would be too invasive for an endangered species. I keep imagining the sentences say things that they don't. Previous studies estimate that birds can use 20% to 30% less energy while flying in a V. Okay. From a behavioral perspective, it's really a breakthrough, says David Lentink, a mechanical engineer at Stanford University in Palo Alto, California, who was not involved in their work, showing that birds care about syncing their wing beats is definitely an important insight that we didn't have before. Okay, cool. Scientists do not know how the birds find that aerodynamic sweet spot, but they suspect that the animals align themselves either by sight or by sensing the air currents of their feathers. Alternately, they may move around until they find the location with the least resistance. In future studies, the researchers will switch to more common birds such as pigeons or geese. They plan to investigate how the animals decide to set the course and the pace, and whether a mistake made by the leader can ripple through the rest of the flock to cause traffic jams. It's a pretty impressive piece of work as it is, but it does suggest that there's a lot more to learn, says Ty Hendrick, a biologist at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, who studies flight aerodynamics in birds and insects. However, they do it, he says. Birds are awfully good hang glider highlights. Okay, great. So the birds are flying in a V, and then whatever they thought about it. The main purpose of the passage is to describe how squadrons of planes get out of here. Discuss the effect of downdrafts on birds and air. I don't think it's on airplanes too. Explain research conducted to study why some birds fly in a V. Probably illustrate how birds sense air. It's not the whole passage. So let's see. The author includes the quotation "air gets pretty unpredictable behind a flapping wing" to say that it gets really unpredictable, I guess. So explain that the current created by a bird differs from that if unpredictable. I don't know. I think that was the paragraph where they're talking about airplanes, which is why I kind of stopped saying halfway through that answer choice A was gross, but I'm not sure. Stress the amount of control exerted by birds flying in a V formation. I don't think that one's right. Indicate that wind movement is continuously changing. No. Emphasize that the flapping of the bird's wings is powerful. I need to read the paragraph to get more context. Oh my god. Drafting, but currents created by airplanes are far more stable. It is comparing airplanes and birds, so I think 23 is A. What can reasonably be inferred about the reason Usherwood used northern bald irises as the subjects of his study? Northern bald, I don't remember. Ibises were well acquainted with their migration route. Usherwood knew the ibises were familiar with carrying data loggers through. Ibises have bodies that are similar to that of a modern air. I know it's not that. That sounds crazy. The ibises were easily accessible for Usher. Okay, so I could really only get rid of 24C. So I'm going to have to backdoor. That's 3 to... I don't think it's going to be that early, so I'm going to start from the bottom, I think. 29. The device's GPS determined each bird's flight position within 30... So what's the reason that he used northern bald irises? Because GPS. There's no answer that matches with GPS being really accurate, so it's not 25D. C 22 to 24. The study published in Nature took advantage of an existing project to reintroduce instrument. It took advantage of an existing project. So he used northern ball irises because it was like there was a project that already did it. It's not actually easily. It might be 24D with 25C. I'm gonna check the rest. 10 squadrons of planes can save fuel by flying in a V4. Okay, get out of here. It's planes. 3 to 7, I think, is way too early. A new study of ibises finds that these big birds carefully position their wings and sink their flap, and presumably to This doesn't say why he used the northern ibises in their study. So, yeah, the only contender, even though it's kind of like a it's not as explicit as I would like it to be, but all the other answer choices are impossible because they're false. So I'm going to go ahead and say this is 24D with 25C. I hope that was the letter that correlated with that. We'll see. 26. What's the most likely reason the author includes a 30 centimeter measurement in line 30? 30. Devices GPS determine each bird's flight position within 30 centimeters. An accelerometer show the time to within 30. I don't know. It's saying it's like it show with its where the birds are accurately, demonstrate the accuracy with which the data loggers collected to present recorded data about how far an ibis flies. Okay, they don't like flap once every 30 centimeters. That's ridiculous. To provide the wingspan length of it's not talking about bird size. To show how far behind the micro light plane each. Okay, they weren't flying behind. Were they? Were they? Okay, but this sentence is about GPS, and so it's talking about the accuracy of the GPS, right? So A. What does the author imply about pelicans, storks, and geese flying in a V formation? Oh, I remember. He mentioned that in like the top of the second column, I think line 46 or something. So it's going to be from that paragraph. Well, let's see. What does the author imply about the pelicans? They communicate with each other in the same way as do ibises. I don't know. They have the same migration routes as those ibises. They create similar weight to that ibis. They expend more energy than... Oh my god. So these are all like, I don't know. So then we're going to have to check. But I think the line for 28 is going to come from paragraph starting with line 45. So let's check maybe... Yeah, like I don't think it's going to be 35 to 38. I'm going to check anyway, but bird flew directly. Yeah, this is not, I can't tie that directly to pelicans, storks, and geese. 47 to 48. Smaller birds create more complex wakes than would make drafting too difficult. I don't know. I don't like that it doesn't say like pelicans, storks, and geese. 52. Previous studies estimate that birds can use 20% to 30% less energy while flying in a V. 60, 60, 67. Alternatively, they may move around until they... I don't think this one's about the ibises. So this is in the wrong paragraph. So I think that like if College Board's going to get me to prove that I'm picking a line that's about pelicans, storks, and geese, then I have to pick the one that's from the paragraph about pelicans, storks, and geese. I'm going to say 28 is like B or C. And then now I can look for pairs. So if it's 28 where it's talking about how smaller birds create complex wakes that would make drafting difficult, then they're saying that the larger birds don't. Is ibis a big bird? Likely to apply to other long-winged birds? Okay, so then maybe, because like the ibis was a long-winged, but that's why it applies to the other ones. I think it might be like 28B with 27. Oh my god, they expend more. Not that. They create similar. Maybe they have the same. Not that they communicate. Okay, so I think it might be 27C with 28B. I'm gonna check 28C though. Previous studies estimate that birds can use 20% to 30% less energy while flying in a V. The only one that mentions energy in 27 is 27D, but that says they use more energy, and then so it's like the opposite of what the line said. So I'm pretty sure that this is going to be whatever the letters were. 27. I think it was C with 28B. I hope. What's the main idea of the 7th paragraph? Oh my god, 62. Scientists do not know how the birds find the aerodynamic speeds, but they suspect that the animals align themselves. Alternatively, in future studies, they plan. Okay, so they're talking. They don't know what's going to happen, but we hope to research it or something. Different types of hierarchy. What mistakes can happen when long terms are created? What future research will help scientists to better understand? Maybe long-winged birds watch the lead bird closely. I think it's C. I don't like that it says like will help. It should say like may help, but all the other answer choices seem kind of preposterous to me, so I'm going to go with C. The 30, the author uses the phrase aerodynamic sweet spot in line 63 to say it's the sweet spot. Like whenever they ask, like, hey, what does this phrase mean? The answer is just what the phrase said, right? The 63. Aerodynamic, so do not know how they find the aerodynamic sweet spot, but they suspect that animals align. Okay, so it's like when he uses the phrase aerodynamic sweet spot, he's most likely to talk about how there's a sweet spot in pertaining to aerodynamics. Describe how the proper structural design of an airplane, this is about birds, show that flying can be an exhilarating. No, describe the bird's suggest that a certain position in V4 has the least amount of wind. D, what the heck? Okay, as used in line 72, ripple most nearly means. What line? 70, I forgot already. 72? And whether a mistake made by the leader can ripple through the rest, like spread through all of them or something. It can fluctuate. Spread through all of them. Oh my god, even Russian targeting works. Okay. From Tocqueville. Okay, he's probably going to say something insane. Harriet Taylor Mill. As the United States and European states grew increasingly democratic during the 19th century, debates arose whether the freedoms enjoyed by men should be accepted. Okay, great. I have shown how democracy destroys or modifies the different inequalities which originate in society, but is that all? Or does it not ultimately affect the great inequality of man and woman, which is seen at the present day to be eternally based in human nature? I believe that the social changes which bring nearer to the same level the father and the son, the master and the servant, and superiors and inferiors generally speaking, will raise woman and make her more the equal of man. But here, more than ever, I feel the necessity of making myself clearly understood, for there is no subject on which the coarse and lawless fancies of our age have taken a freer range. Okay, I like when you're talking about men and women, like he uses master and slave and superior and inferior, like as an analog. Okay, there are people in Europe who, confounding together the different characteristics of the sexes, would make of men and women beings not only equal but alike. They would give to both the same functions, impose on both the same duties, and grant to both the same rights. They would mix them in all things: their occupations, their pleasures, their business. It may readily be conceived that by thus attempting to make one sex equal to the other, both are degraded, and for so preposterous a medley of the works of nature, nothing could ever result but weak men and disorderly women. Okay, Tocqueville. It is not thus that the Americans understand that species of democratic equality, which may be established between the sexes. Oh, wait. Is this good about him? If he's happy about wait, hang on. They admit, I don't want to jump to conclusions. They admit that as nature has appointed such wide differences between the physical and moral constitution of man, oh wow, there's moral differences too, in man and women, her manifest design was to give a distinct employment to their various faculties, and they hold that improvement does not consist in making beings so dissimilar do pretty nearly the same things, but in getting each of them to fill their respective tasks in the best manner possible. Okay, so he's like happy that America's like segregation-y. The Americans have applied to the sexes the great principle of political economy which governs the manufactures of our age by carefully dividing the duties of man from those of women in order that the great work of society might be better. Okay, so he's like, I love America, which I that's why I kind of paused when I read that paragraph. I was like, I don't know if it's good if he's like happy about America, because his viewpoint seemed a little bit inflammatory, whatever the word is. Okay, so he's like, yeah, the Americans are doing it right because they're really sexist. As society was constituted until the last few generations, inequality was its very basis. Association grounded on equal rights scarcely existed. To be equal was to be enemies. Two persons could hardly cooperate in anything or meet in any amicable relation without the laws appointing that one of them should be the superior of the other. Okay, mankind have outgrown this state. Oh, nice! And all things now tend to substitute as a general principle of human relations a just equality instead of the domination of the dominion of the strongest. But of all relations, that between men and women, being the nearest and most intimate and connected with the greatest number of strong emotions, was sure to be the last to throw off the old rule and receive the new, for in proportion to the strength of the feeling is the tenacity with which it clings to the forms and circumstances with which it has even accidentally become associated. One thing to notice there is I kind of like thought they were talking about men and women from the beginning, but he actually only mentions it halfway through this paragraph with the contrast transition there, like on line 53. So then when he's talking about society up there in the beginning and he's talking about two people and whatnot, that could very well mean two men. Like the fact that he transitions to like the men and women relationship halfway through means the stuff before it isn't about men and women yet. The proper sphere for all human beings is the largest and highest which they're able to attain to. What this is cannot be ascertained without complete liberty of choice. Let every occupation be open to all without favor or discouragement to any, and employments will fall into the hands of those men or women who are found by experience to be the most capable of worthily exercising them. Exercising, not exorcising. There need be no fear that women will take out of the hands of men any occupation which men perform better than they. Each individual will prove his or her capacities in the only way in which capacities can be proved by trial, and the world will have the benefit of the best faculties of all its inhabitants. But to interfere beforehand by an arbitrary limit and to declare that whatever be the genius, talent, energy, or force of, where's the next page? I forgot. Okay, I figured out how to get 2 pages on one screen so it's full screen, and I got discombobulated right there. So, okay, sorry. Story aside. Force of mind of an individual or a certain sex or class, those faculties shall not be exerted or shall be exerted only in some few of the many modes in which others are permitted to use theirs. What was the sentence saying? Oh my god. Line 75. But to interfere beforehand by an arbitrary limit and declare that whatever be the genius, talent, energy, force of mind of an individual, certain blah, 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 those faculties shall not be exerted or shall be exerted only in some few of the many modes in which others are permitted to use theirs, is not only an injustice to the individual, but a detriment to society. Oh my god, this is long. Which loses what it can ill spare, but is also the most effectual way of providing that in the sex or class so fettered, the qualities which are not permitted to be exercised shall not exist. Okay, so he's saying like it's kind of like equality of like opportunity. Is that the word for it? Where he's just saying like people should people should be free to like prove themselves. They should be free to pursue anything. So that if they're really good at it, then they can do it. 30, line 9, raise. This answer to this will raise women and make her more and more the equal of men. It'll like lift her up. It won't increase women. It sounds crazy. Cultivate women. Women are not plants. Nurture women. Women are not babies. It's a D. In passage 1, Tocqueville implies the treatment of men and women is identical in nature. It'd be bad. Neither would fit. Not A. Both sexes would be greatly. I think it's that. Men would try to reclaim their. I don't think he said that. Men and women would have privileges they do not. No, it's like women wouldn't have privileges. I'm pretty sure 33 is B. And the place where he said that, I think I remember. Never mind, I don't remember. Okay, so just use the lines and then don't be hubristic like I was and waste like 10 seconds. Alright, 15 to 18. There are people in Europe who confounding together that would make men and women not. Okay, so he just says they make them equal and say bad things are going to happen. 18 to 20, they would give the same thing. They say they're going to be equal, not that bad things are going to happen. C, 22 to 24. They readily conceive that by thus attending both are degree. I think it's that. So 34 C with 33 B. 35. As used in line 53, dominion most nearly means 53. Dominion. Yeah, okay, I need to begin. Mankind of the growth state of all things now tend to substitute as a general principle of human relations of just equality instead of the dominion of the strongest. Like the rule of them or something. The omnipotence is way too strong. The supremacy, the ownership, the supremacy, right? Like they're the ones that are ruling B. In passage 2, Mill most strongly suggests that gender roles are resistant to change because they... Oh, like he said, it was like that place where I pointed out, where he was like, they've been really like entrenched for a long time or something, and then so that's why they're hard to change. Entrenched, perhaps? Oh my god. Wait, have long served as the basis for formal organization of society. I think A is a trap, because like, I think that's what I was pointing out, where when the part where he's talking about the formal basis of organizing society, that was the beginning of the paragraph. First paragraph of passage 2, where he hadn't mentioned gender roles yet. And so I think that this is going to be scrolling up the wrong way. I think that this is going to be a trap. Like, I think that if you pick 36A, then College Board is going to say that that's not about gender roles, which is what they're asking about. Or matters, I think it might be B, can influence legislative reforms at random, benefit the group and institution. They're resistant to change because they can benefit the groups and institutions. Okay, that's not what he said. So I know that's going to be from the second half of that paragraph. So around like after line 53. Maybe 37C. In proposing to strengthen the feelings of tenacity with which it clings. Maybe I'm gonna check the other. That's not D. That's like in the wrong paragraph. 46 to 47. That's too early. 46 to 49. Also too. Okay, it has to be that then. It's the only part that's in the correct part of the passage. So it's 37C. Both authors would most likely agree that the changes in gender roles that he described would be, I don't know, one says it's bad, the other one says that it's like good, so I'm not sure what they'd agree. Part of a broader shift towards, social shift towards greater equality, unlikely to provide benefits to outweigh their, unlikely to provide benefits. I think the second guy would disagree. Wait, unlikely to, no, neither of them would disagree, right? Like they both want their changes to happen. The first guy was like, oh, no, the first guy doesn't want things to change, right? So that, okay, so then I think that B is wrong. He wouldn't agree. Inevitable given the economic stuff is random, I think. At odds with the principles of American democracy. Did they talk about American democracy? No, he actually, the first passage guy said that he likes the American way, and so it wouldn't be at odds with it. I think it's A, and I can see why, because first guy would admit that it's a shift towards greater equality. He would just be like, yeah, and that's a bad thing. And then the second guy would be like, it's a shift towards greater equality, but it's a good thing. So they would both agree that equality is going up, I think. So 38A, Tocqueville, in passage 1, would most likely characterize the position taken by Mill in line 65 as what is the position? Let every occupation be open. Okay, so there's like the equality opportunity thing, right? So Tocqueville would be like, no, wrong, less radical. That means that would be kind of good. He's like, oh, it's not that crazy. Persuasive he wouldn't be positive. Ill-advised but consistent. It might be that. Compatible with I think it might be C. I'm going to read more carefully though. Ill-advised but consistent with a view held by some other advocates. Yeah, like the European people that he mentioned in the second paragraph, I think. So C. Which choice best describes the ways that two authors conceive of the individual's proper positions in society? Men and women should be separate for passage 1. You should have equality of opportunity in the second guy. Believes that an individual's position should be defined in important ways by that individual's sex, while Mill believes that an individual's abilities should be the determining factor. Maybe. Tocqueville believes that an individual's economic... Get out of here. Tocqueville, they really hammer the economics here. I don't know why. I didn't see like it at all, I think. But Tocqueville believes that an individual's temperament temperament should determine the individual's temperament. I don't want to conflate temperament with their sex, so like you can't infer that. No, Tocqueville believes that an individual's position should be determined by what is most beneficial to society. Well, it believes it should be determined by what an individual finds most rewarding. Okay, there's definitely nothing about the rewarding. I think 40's a 41. Based on passage 2, Mill would most likely say that the application of the great principle of political economy to gender roles has so Mill's second guy would say, what about the first guy? The Americans being sexist? He would be like, yo, that's wrong. Prevents many men and women from developing their full potential. Maybe. It makes it difficult for men and women to sympathize. He didn't really talk about the sympathizing with one another. It unintentionally furthers the cause of gender. He's not going to say that it makes gender equality better when you're really sexist. It guarantees that women take occupations that men are, but it guarantees? Oh, get out of here. Okay, so this one's A, right? It prevents many men and women from developing their full potential. Yeah, I think. Onwards. No time. Oh my god, I literally have like -5 minutes. Okay. The Higgs boson is an elementary particle associated with the Higgs field. Experiments conducted in 2012-2013 tentatively confirmed the existence of the Higgs boson. Great. Nearly half a century ago, Peter Higgs and a handful of other physicists were trying to understand the origin of a basic physical feature, mass. You can think of mass as an object's heft, or a little more precisely as the resistance it offers to having its motion change. Push on a freight train or a feather to increase its speed, and the resistance you feel is its mass. Oh, that's cool. At a microscopic level, the molecules and atoms, which are themselves built from fundamental particles, electrons... What? I skipped a line, I think. No, I didn't. Fundamental particles, electrons, and quarks? The freight train's mass comes from its constituent molecules and atoms, which are themselves built from fundamental particles, electrons, and quarks. Once again, my disability of reading is slowing me down. Okay, so, but where do the masses... Not disability, inability to read, I think is the correct term, but where do the masses of these and other fundamental particles come from? Okay, so mass question. When physicists in the 1960s modeled the behavior of these particles using equations rooted in quantum physics, they encountered a puzzle. If they imagined that the particles were all massless, then each term in the equations clicked into a perfect symmetric pattern, like the tips of a perfect snowflake. Okay, I didn't know tips of perfect snowflake clicked. Anyway, and this symmetry was not just mathematically elegant, it explained patterns evident in the experimental data, but, and here's the puzzle, physicists knew that the particles did have mass, and when they modified the equations to account for this fact, the mathematical harmony was spoiled. The equations became complex and unwieldy, and were still inconsistent. Okay? So they're using an equation for mass that can't account for mass, and they broke it. So what to do here? Here's the idea put forth by Higgs. Don't shove the particles' masses down the throat of the beautiful equations. Instead, keep the equations pristine and symmetric, but consider them operating within a peculiar environment. Imagine that all of the space is uniformly filled with an invisible substance, now called the Higgs field, that exerts a drag force on particles when they accelerate through it. Push on a fundamental particle in an effort to increase its speed, and according to Higgs, you would feel the drag force as a resistance. Justifiably, you would interpret the resistance as a particle's mass. For a mental toehold, think of a ping pong ball submerged in water. When you push on the ping pong ball, it'll feel much more massive than it does outside of the water. Its interaction with the watery environment has the effect of endowing it with mass. That's actually really cool. So with particles submerged in the Higgs field. In 1964, Higgs submitted a paper to a prominent physics journal in which he formulated this idea mathematically. The paper was rejected. Oh, sad. Not because it contained a technical error, but because the premise of an invisible something permeating space, interacting with particles to provide their mass, well, it all just seemed like heaps of overwrought speculation. What about dark matter, though? The editors of the journal, maybe they didn't discover it yet, or hypothesize it, whatever. The editors of the journal deemed it of no obvious relevance to physics, sad. But Higgs persevered, and his revised paper appeared later that year in another journal, and physicists who took the time to study the proposal gradually realized that his idea was a stroke of genius, one that allowed them to have their cake and eat it too. Nice. Always nice to have cake and eat it. Hate it when I have cake, but I don't eat it. In Higgs' scheme, the fundamental equations can retain their pristine form because the dirty work of providing particles' masses is relegated to the environment. Okay. Oh, so that's just the theory from earlier? While I wasn't around to witness the initial rejection of the Higgs proposal in 1964, well, I was around, but only barely, I can attest to that by the mid-1980s, the assessment had changed. The physics community had, for the most part, fully bought into the idea that there was a Higgs field permeating space. In fact, in a graduate course I took that covered what's known as the standard model of particle physics, the quantum equations physicists have assembled to describe the particles of matter and the dominant forces by which they influence each other, the professor presented the Higgs field with such certainty that for a long while I had no idea that it had yet to be established experimentally. On occasion, this happens in physics. Mathematical equations can sometimes tell such a convincing tale. They can seemingly radiate reality so strongly that they become entrenched in the vernacular of working physicists even before there's data to confirm. There's entrenched again. Cool. Experiments conducted Yeah. I think we've proven that that's correct now, I think, right? But don't quote me on that because my knowledge of physics is like abysmal. Over the course of the passage, the main focus shifts from technical account of the Higgs field to a description of it aimed at a broad audience. I don't know if it's a technical account at the beginning. It was like a very like a casual. It was like, oh, here, like you should think of it as like a train. So like they're simplifying. A recent review of Higgs work. I don't think this is a word. Explanation of the Higgs field to a discussion of the response to Higgs, an analysis of the Higgs field to a suggestion of future discoveries that I build upon. I think it's C. Yeah, I think. The main purpose of the analogy of the ping pong ball is to help you help you understand how the Higgs field works. Popularize? No. Contrast? Competing? No. Criticize? No. It's D. The author most strongly suggests that the reason the scientific community initially rejected Higgs' idea was that the idea was, it seems crazy. They were like, oh, how are we supposed to believe this is an invisible thing? Address the problem unnoticed. Why would you reject it if it addresses a problem? Only worked if the equations were flawless? No, he fixed the equations, I thought. Okay, that seems a little extreme to me. Rendered accepted theories in physics obsolete. I don't think it said that. I think it might be D, but we'll check with the line just to make sure it pairs. I think D was set around like line 46, right? Yeah, where the paper was rejected. Is there something? So maybe B or C, 46, 48. That just says he sent it in. So 48 to 53. Not because it contained a technical error, because the premise of invisible something permeating space, interacting with particles, provide their mass, well, all just seemed like, oh, yeah, speculation. Great, perfect. So then I think 45 is C, with 44, which one was D? Okay, onward. The author notes that one reason Higgs' theory gained acceptance was that it let them have their cake and eat it too. Let scientists accept two conditions that had previously seemed irreconcilable. Maybe. Introduce an innovative approach that could be applied to additional I don't think they used it to additional problems. They just applied it to the Higgs field, which is like the problem. Answered a question that earlier scientists had not even raised. Explained why two distinct phenomena were being misinterpreted. What? Okay, so I'm pretty sure 46 is A. It sounds like the have your cake and eat it too. And that was somewhere in the second column, in the middle. It was like lines 58. Maybe 47C. Let's see, 55. Let's say 55 to 63. Higgs persevered. This is a stroke of genius. He had his cake and ate it. Okay, great. I think it's that. So 46, let's sign A, and then 47, 55 to 63, right? C, I think. Which statement best describes the technique the author uses to advance the main point of the last paragraph? I forgot what that was. Oh, he talks about like his own experience and how his teacher was kind of like, his teacher said it so convincingly that he thought that the Higgs field was already proven. Oh my God, what question are we on? Oh my God, Rex, focus. I think it's 48, right? Okay. To advance the main point of the last year, he recounts a personal experience to illustrate a characteristic of the discipline of physics. Maybe he describes his own education to show how physics has changed I don't think he's making the point that it changed. He was trying to show how like physics has this trend of kind of treating things as proven before they are. He provides autobiographical details to demonstrate how the Higgs theory was confirmed. He wasn't involved in it though, and it wasn't confirmed by then either. He contrasts the status of Higgs theory at two time periods to reveal how the details of the theory evolved. What? Wait, so his account had nothing to do with the theory evolving, right? Like it was just his personal experience with encountering the idea of it and thinking that it was true. I think 48A, right? He recounts a personal experience to illustrate a character. Yeah, as used in 70, established most nearly means. Almost there. I'm minus like 13 minutes. All right, go. Established? 77? I had no idea that yet to be established. Like proven? Yet to be validated. Yet to be introduced. It's A. What purpose does the graph serve in relation to the passage as a whole? Shows a bunch of particles. Here's the introduction of a concept particle to experimental confirmation. Okay, it indicates the scientific community's quick acceptance. It's not quick. It was like really long. It places discussion of the reception of the Higgs boson in a broader scientific context. Maybe it demonstrates that the Higgs boson was regarded differently than were other hypothetical particles. Maybe if you're saying that the way that's regarded differently is that it took longer. But I don't know if taking longer to prove something means that it was regarded differently, like they saw it in a different light. It clarifies the way in which the Higgs boson represented a major discovery. Okay, it's not saying D. I think it's going to be B or C. And then if I want to find a way to disprove one of them, I think. Oh, so if it's asking about graph and passage, and the passage wasn't making the point that the Higgs boson was regarded differently. Like the passage was actually making the point that the Higgs boson was similar to a lot of other things. Like it was like a trend in physics to treat it that way. So I think it's B because C would clash with the passage. that they mentioned in the question. Which statement is best supported by the data presented in the graph? Okay, so the same graph, yeah. W boson, Z boson are proposed experimentally and confirmed at about the same time. W boson, C. Okay, their bars are kind of similar. So A, but I should check there. The Higgs boson was experimentally confirmed more quickly than were most other particles. Tau neutrino was about the same time as the tau. Okay, that's wrong. I mean, it took longer than the electron neutrino. Muon neutrino took longer than the electron. Muon took longer than it took shorter. I skipped B for some weird reason. Experimentally confirmed more quickly than were other particles. Okay, definitely not. Okay, so 51A. And last one! Sorry, boss, I'm coming. 52, based on the graph, the author's depiction of Higgs theory in the mid-1980s is most analogous to which hypothetical? The mid-1980s. That was when he was at school? That was before it was proven? But they treated it like it was? Muon neutrino was widely disputed until being confirmed. It wasn't being disputed in the case of the Higgs in the 1980s. Few physicists in 2012 doubted the reality of what's 2012. Okay, it was already proven by 2012, so that doesn't have to do with the Higgs not being proven by the 1980s. No physicists prior to 1960 considered the possibility of that doesn't match because they thought that the Higgs boson was correct or the Higgs field was correct, and so they must have thought of it prior to whenever that time was. So most physicists in 1940 believed in these. Oh, is it that? As long as 1940s before it's proven, I guess. Was it electron neutrino? Electron neutrino? Yeah, okay, it's D. All right, I gotta go. Thanks. Bye.